Hi, indie authors. This is Valerie Ihsan. It is season 2 and episode 20 of the podcast, and it is August 14th, 2019, as I record this. I am in a new office. I had some work downtown to do, so I'm in my downtown office in Eugene, Oregon, instead of my home office in Springfield, Oregon. So we're going to be talking about perfectionism today. And I'm really unsure about the sound quality for this episode because I don't have my regular microphone, and my office is right on the street, and it's a pretty busy street in Eugene. So here's to hoping that the quality of the sound is good. So on to the personal segment. I'm still working through the coursework of Sweet Spot Strategy, and if you are interested in being interviewed by me privately, you can email me and set up something. It'll be 30 minutes of your time, and I have 4 or 5 questions maybe. Basically, you just get to talk about yourself, which isn't usually a problem for most people. You can email me, Valerie at valerieihsanauthor.com, or you can go directly to, I have a scheduling tool now, so you can go to indieauthormentor.as.me, and you can go there and schedule online for, just choose the interview call option. So yeah, it's indieauthormentor.as.me, and it's acuity scheduling. That's what the AS stands for. But I liked it because in my head it was Indie Author Mentor as me, which I quite liked. Okay, what I'm reading right now, I just finished reading Sparks by Maren Anderson, and it was awesome. I really loved it, and I'm reading First Frost by Sarah Addison Allen right now, which is also awesome. Nonfiction, I'm just finishing up Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit. And what else is happening? I think that's all I'm going to do for my personal update today, because I really want to get into the topic of perfectionism, which I think is a great addition to our mindset season. I'd like to remind everybody that this podcast is sponsored by my supporters at Patreon, and being a patron of the arts is a totally cool thing to do. Joining my Patreon community also gets you sneak peeks into my creative world, and for $1 a month or more, you too can become a patron of the arts and of me. You can find me at patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN. Under resources, I just wanted to give a shout out for the website Chris Writes, Chris with a K, KRISWRITES.com. She is a prolific author, many books, and many years in the publishing industry, and she writes a really great blog for the business of writing, and often talks about some of that nitty-gritty stuff that nobody else seems to talk about, like intellectual property rights and stuff like that. So it's a very in-depth blog, and often her blog posts turn into books, which I then read. So check out chriswrites.com. I'm actually going to be at a conference in November that she is speaking at, and she is going to be talking about perfectionism. So I'm really looking forward to hearing her talk at that conference. That's a 20 Books to 50K conference in Las Vegas. So if you happen to be going to that, I will be there too. Email me or find me on Instagram or in my Facebook group, The Indie Author Mentor, and tell me you'll be there, and let's have coffee while we're there. Okay, on to the main topic of perfectionism. So, I want to talk about what it is, how it shows up, and what you can do about it. So what it is just that feeling of, okay, so we'll talk about writing books because we're all authors here. So it has to be perfect before I can release it into the world. That's what perfectionism is, kind of in a nutshell. You want something to be perfect. And the reason we get stuck on that, well, I'll get into that in just a minute. So it has to be perfect before I can release it into the world. And so then I thought, well, in true Becca Syme style, I wanted to question that premise. Like, why is it that is a thought or a belief structure that people, myself included, sometimes have? Well, people will think I'm dumb if it's bad, or people will think I'm a loser if it's bad, or I'll be embarrassed or horrified or mortified or ashamed. Insert any adjective there. A big one for me is people won't take me seriously if it's not professional. I'll let myself down if it's not the best work that I can do. Or so-and-so won't be proud of me if the book's not any good. So those are some of the reasons how perfectionism, I guess, what it looks like. So how it shows up in a writer's world I have a little bullet list right here for us to discuss. So one of them is kind of like that being stuck in cement feel. So that's when you rewrite that same book for 10 years, just over and over and over, just trying to make it so perfect. It's just not done yet. It's not done yet. It's not done yet. And you get stuck in that and mired in that. And you just can't ever publish it, or you can't ever move on to a new project. So that's one way perfectionism shows up. I'm going to go through a couple more, and then we'll circle back around and we'll talk about what to do about perfectionism when it shows up in our lives in that way. So another way perfectionism shows up is you never start, coming up with all kinds of excuses why you can't work on the book. Maybe it's because you're at home with your kids, or you've got a partner and you're in a new relationship and your energy needs to be over here, or you don't have any support, or you don't have any resources, or you have chronic health problems or mental illness, or you've got a job that takes up all your time and you have no energy at the end of the day, or you've got too much to do, and it can just perpetuate. There's so many excuses why you cannot do this work and why you can't get started on this writing project or continue this writing project. Another one that shows up is not wanting to be bad at something. That's how perfectionism often shows up in my life personally. I don't want to look bad. So yeah, personally, like, writing was something that I was good at, and I didn't want to find out differently. I didn't want to, logically I knew that books needed to be edited and reworked before they were published, and that rough drafts, were messy, confusing things that didn't look anything like the finished product. But I didn't actually, believe that. Somewhere deep inside, I thought that if I was good enough, insert negative belief structure, like maybe I should have said, like, okay, so I'm saying to myself that I didn't think I was good enough, but what I really was saying was not a good enough person. So that's the struggle that I was having when I was an emerging writer, just started, not published anything yet. And somewhere deep inside, I thought that if I was good enough, or a good enough person, that my rough draft would be practically perfect, and people would read it and say, "What? This is rough draft? No way!" And of course, that's never going to happen. That is a complete fantasy. And in fact, that has never happened to me, and I don't know anybody that it has happened to. So, but not only did I not want to be bad at something, or more accurately, look bad, I didn't want to know that I was subpar, not good enough as a human, and somehow I'd wrapped that perfectionism of not being a good enough writer at that time into being not good enough person, which of course is fraught with lots of things to work out in therapy. So what do you do if you come up with some of these in your writing life? So first of all, know that your first book is not going to be your best work, ever. It might be the best work that you can do right then, but you're going to grow as a writer. Your skills are going to improve. Here's how I battled perfectionism in this one particular instance. I was just about to publish my first novel, and it was out with the ARC readers, the advanced readers, and so it was just prior to publication, and I heard back from another author who had read the book and said that she perceived so just to clarify, when you're getting thoughts back from ARC readers, the advanced reader team, that's not when you want to be changing your manuscript around. Like it should have already gone through the proofreader and everything. Like it's ready to go. You just want to hit upload on the Amazon screen and on the Nook screen and the Barnes and the Kobo screens and stuff. So I didn't really expect any feedback. So when this author who had, published more books than I had, came to me and said that she perceived this lack of character motivation in the book, it was like the characters did things just because the author, wanted them to do them. I was done working on the book. Like I didn't want to change anything. And it had taken me a couple of years to finish that book. It was my first novel, and I was really proud of it, actually. Even after her constructive feedback, I said to her, thank you for the feedback. Thanks for reading it. I'd love a review. But here's the thing. It's my first book. I know it's not going to be the best thing I ever write. It's good enough for a first book. I'm going to make more, but it's time for me to let this go. And more important, I knew that if I spent time reworking the book and rewriting and adding in character motivation and tweaking here and tweaking there, say I spent another 6 months to a year on this, I knew that the book would not improve. It would improve, but it wouldn't improve enough to I don't know if substantiate's the right word. I didn't want to put in a whole bunch of time, like a year's worth of time, just to get a little bit of return on that time. If the book only improved a little bit by putting in 6 months to a year's worth of time into it, I didn't want to do that. I would become a better writer by just writing the next book. I would not improve my writing skills by tweaking this one. It was completely done, and I really liked it, and I just let it go, and I put it out there. So that's how I kind of beat perfectionism in that instance. And so here's another resource, actually, that I wanted to point out, and that is Kristine Kathryn Rusch of chriswrites.com. She wrote a book called The Pursuit of Perfection and How It Harms Writers. Excellent, excellent information. So I highly recommend reading that book for mindset shifting about perfectionism. It's called The Pursuit of Perfection and How It Harms Writers by Kristine Kathryn Rusch. The Kristine and the Kathryn are all K's. So I guess that pulls me around to let's look at the other ones on the bullet list on how it showed up, because we talked about what to do about if your perfectionism is preventing you from finishing that book and putting it out into the world. Just recognizing that first books are not going to be great books and be okay with that. So let's go back up to the first list, and that was finding excuses why you can't work on your book. So I've heard people say that if you don't want it, and in this case, it's publishing a book or finding time to write, if you don't want it hard enough, then you don't really want it, which always incensed me because I did too want to write. I legitimately thought that I just couldn't because of all these other reasons, all these excuses that I had. They felt like totally legitimate excuses and reasons. But what they really weren't excuses. It was just perfectionism. And I think that in my case, and in a lot of authors' cases, perfectionism can be labeled really as self-doubt. And I've also discovered in my personal experience that perfectionism is this like crazy mutant version of my inner editor. So one thing that has helped me with that brand of perfectionism is Nanowrimo. And if you don't know what that is yet, nanowrimo.org, it's NANOWRIMO.org, is a challenge, a supported challenge for a writer to write a novel in 1 month. In 30 days, write 50,000 words. And the first time I tried it and finished it, I learned 2 things. And one of those was that I worked faster than that inner editor. And when I could hear him running up behind me, I would stuff in those earplugs and just remind myself it's about quantity right now, not about quality. I don't need to listen to the inner editor right now. I just need to get words on the page right now. I can listen to him later. We can have a chat. Let's, hot chocolate with marshmallows. What'd you think of the book? And we can go through with the inner editor at that point. But right now, all I needed to do was get the words on the page. It was about quantity, not quality. So that was the first thing, was that writing fast could silence that inner editor for a while. And the other thing that I learned was that I did have time to write. All my excuses were just moot at that point. I did have time to write. I had a family. I was raising 2 young children in elementary school age. I was homeschooling my 2nd grader, and I still wrote every day. So that just kind of, silenced all my excuses. Maybe you'll learn something different from NaNoWrimo if you do it. But as far as self-doubt goes, I just try to remember that everyone, even Lee Child and Stephen King and Sandra Brown and Clive Cussler and Rachel Herron and Joanna Penn and basically just all authors, they all struggle with self-doubt. And that just is part of being an author. It's part of the writing process. Having self-doubt and moving through it and processing it and writing some more and researching some more and editing some more and feeling some more self-doubt until you publish it, and then you come up with a new idea and you start all over again. It's just part of the author process. And so when I remember that is just part of the process, all authors go through it, I can default into more of a self-care position. And so some of the things that I do for self-care when I'm feeling self-doubt are things like affirmations and meditation and journaling. I take myself on artist dates. I try to do something that inspires me. I read. I write. I connect with other authors. I get involved in writing organizations or volunteer at conferences. I have coffee with local authors. I email authors that I admire and want to emulate, and just surround myself with people who think I'm awesome. That does wonders for my self-doubt. I also learn. So I'll read books and listen to podcasts and take classes so that I get inspired, I change my mindset, and I learn new things. If I have doubt about my ability about something, then I'll study it until I'm confident that I can do it. So last thoughts on perfectionism, the kind that keeps you from writing and putting your work out into the world anyway, are go to Goodreads or Amazon and look up those bestsellers or those famous authors and read their reviews. Because if your reviews are coming in and you've got 1-star reviews, some of them, then you're in good company, because lots of people also hated or didn't resonate with The Great Gatsby or The Da Vinci Code or Eat, Pray, Love. So you're in good company if you have a few 1-star reviews. And then the other thing I wanted to leave you with was my biggest epiphany as a writer is that my husband is not my target audience. I will never write a book that he will love. And that's okay, because he doesn't read the kind of books that I write. That was mind-blowing. I was just so much of a happier writer after realizing that. So I want to leave that with you. If you are struggling with so-and-so won't like my book if it's not perfect, maybe realize or take in this information and remember that maybe that so-and-so in your life is not your target audience, and it doesn't matter how great of a writer you are. They just won't be into it, and that's okay. No problem. So I wanted to leave you with that little tidbit and hope it brings you some comfort. And then to ask the question, how does perfectionism show up in your life? I would like to hear that just from you. I would like to continue the conversation, so leave a comment or email me or reach out in some other way through Instagram or on the Facebook page. I'd really like to hear from you. How does perfectionism show up in your writing life, and how do you deal with it and push through to success? Because if we can start a conversation about this, I think it would be really helpful to the writing community and give other authors ideas about how to manage their own self-doubt and procrastination and perfectionism and all those isms that we struggle with in our author businesses. So be well, happy writing, happy publishing, and I'll see you in the next video.